This is an A4J podcast by students for students. My name is Skip Mozisek, the expert of all things. And I'm here with Lydia and Grace. And today we're going to be talking about, what are we talking about today? Alcohol, drugs, and what else was it?
Suicide.
Oh, and suicide. Well, those all three things can be wrapped up pretty tightly together. But let's talk about alcohol and drugs for a second. I got a question for you, okay? Because it was this way when I was a teenager and in college, and I'm sure it's that way now and even more, and will be 40 years from now. Why is drinking and possibly doing some drugs, why is that so much fun or considered fun? Why is it so attractive for teenagers to want to do that? What do you think it is about it?
You go ahead.
I mean, you see things in like the media, and it looks cool. It's what the cool guys are doing, and they kind of glamorize it, make it more than what it actually.
They sure do. Yeah.
I think a lot of people, like, it's just what their family does, or like they just see it every day, and so they're just kind of like, or it makes them feel grown. Like, oh, I'm older, like, I can drink alcohol.
You make a really good point about that, because I always noticed a lot of people that were my age a long time ago that smoked cigarettes, their parents did. So it may be they think that they're acting older than they are. They think it makes them look mature. Do you think it could be the same way with alcohol and stuff? Mm-hmm. Now, but it's funny you say that media makes them, glamorizes it, makes it look cool. What's cool about it? Like what is the underlying cool issue about it? Because I know the answer to that, but I'm asking you what you think it is about that.
I think that there's just like this thing that goes around that's like your party's not going to be fun unless you have alcohol, and so like it makes it cooler in that sense, I guess. Not actually.
You know why it is? Because it makes you feel good, and you know why it works. It does. It takes your inhibitions away, and it makes you think you're having more fun, and it makes you feel good. So once somebody gets that for the first time, boy, they really want to do that, right? That's good. So I agree with you. I think media and stuff like that and movies about kids, teenagers doing partying and all that kind of stuff. But to be able to be a teenager and have access to it, how do you have access? How does that happen? Because you have to be 21 in Texas to be able to buy alcohol and stuff. What do you guys see, or what frustrates you about how available it is?
It's like parents will give it to their kids.
Really?
Or like they'll buy it for them, pretend they didn't do anything, let them have their own fun.
What I've seen a lot is it is legal for parents to give their kids alcohol, but like their own kids in their own home. But I've seen a lot where like parents will just like their kids have free access to alcohol whenever, like it's just sitting in the fridge, and then they can take it wherever they want. Or it can be like a friend's parents can give another kid alcohol or something like that.
You think that's right? If somebody's in your own home and you're drinking and you have your parents' supervision and they're 16 or 17 years old, is that right?
If they're your parents, but if it's not your parents, you shouldn't.
Or
that shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, or like if I had a friend over, I feel like it could be inappropriate if like I had a friend over and my dad or my mom got out like a drink or something.
And gave it to them?
Mm-hmm.
My parents, they won't even drink if we have people over, like kids. It's just, they don't think it's appropriate.
Right. So do you see that a lot, though? Is it pretty common for people to go to other people's houses and they're able to drink and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about alcohol. How much do you guys see, I don't know, we use the word drugs, but how much do you guys see that kind of stuff in y'all's, in teenagers and in college age and stuff? And you know what I mean? I'm saying when I say drugs, I mean like, marijuana, THC, pills, whatever you want to say falls into that category. Is that pretty popular?
I don't feel like it's as popular. I don't see it as near as much as I see alcohol.
Yeah.
But I know it's there. Like I hear about like a couple of my buddies like smoking weed or something. I'll just hear about it, but I don't think I've ever actually seen it.
Do you think that that's because for a long time there's been a stigma on that only really bad people do that stuff, so it's not as visible, but alcohol has been really accepted, right? Mm-hmm. But now with all these states legalizing THC, do you think that's just going to be where over the next 10 or 20 years that's going to be like alcohol, where it's just you just see it all the time, right?
Yeah, probably.
But still you got somebody doing hard drugs is still not acceptable in the public and people seeing it. You know what I mean? Maybe there might be some places where you see that kind of stuff. But so in your advice, how is alcohol and even drinking at your parents' house or your neighbor's parents' house or whatever, why is that a bad thing, and how can that affect you bad down the road?
I like to think about it in the sense of like, I mean, I know they're not technically related, but like, I always think like, why don't we let like a 12-year-old drive a car? It's because they're not ready to drive a car. Their brain isn't mature enough to drive a car. Now, maybe a 16-year-old isn't either, but that's a whole different thing. But I'm like, obviously there's an age like limit for a reason. Like I've had people tell me like, well, I'm 18. What's the difference between me drinking now and 3 years down the road? And I'm like, your brain's going to be different 3 years down the road. Like, you're introducing something to your brain it's not ready for.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? Why is it a bad thing for young people to do that?
I mean, when you're young, it's like you don't have as much control over yourself, and so you're just leading down the path to addiction, I guess. I mean, you have control over yourself, but your brain isn't like fully developed till 21, so those connections haven't really been made.
That is a fact. That I don't think our brains fully developed till we're in our 20s, And you said it too. We're not responsible. I mean, we have all kind of regulations, right? Mm-hmm. You can't drive a car. You're 16. We don't vote till you're 18. You join the military or whatever. You can't buy a gun till you're 21. Mm-hmm. Same thing with alcohol. And I think what happens a lot is we don't make good decisions when we're young, and we especially don't make good decisions when we are drinking and we're under the influence. So you combine those two, and it can be really, really bad, right? But there's also such a thing as that I've seen is when you start chemically changing your brain with alcohol and drugs at a young age, you actually can stop the development of your brain, and you will mentally stay kind of at that age for a very long time. It's called arrested development. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people that start using drugs and alcohol when they're 16 and they continue to do so, they may be in their 40s, but they mentally still make decisions, and their ability to be responsible or all that is still like they're 16 years old.
And even your emotions at 16 are different.
100%. And if you start numbing things and start and try to self-medicate with alcohol and drugs and stuff, is you will emotionally stay at that age. And that's why it will hurt you so bad when you're in your 40s. And you see that all the time. You see people. Now, I'm not saying they still may work and make money and have a house and do all that, but emotionally they're acting like they're still 16 years old. And it happens all around us all the time. And it takes a long time but your brain's amazing. It'll rewire itself. It'll get itself straight, but it takes a long time. And most of the time, people that struggle in alcohol and addiction don't realize the amount of time it took them to get in trouble with those. Sometimes it takes about that long to get yourself figured out and get right to get out of that kind of stuff too. But I think you guys have made a good point that that's a road you don't even want to start going down, because there's not many. I do a little court class at people that get in trouble with DWIs and public intoxication and stuff like that, and they're able to come take this 4-hour class, and they get their ticket dismissed, and they don't have to have it on their record, but it's an education thing that I have to do. And one of the things that I do at the beginning of every one of these classes, I make a chart and I say what are the positives about drugs and alcohol, and what are the negatives? And once they all open up and start talking, there ends up being about 2 or 3 things that you would consider positive and about 100 things that would be negative. it's just not even. There's too much data and too much things that can happen that are bad versus feeling good in the moment and temporarily not thinking about something that makes you, anxiety or depression, something that makes you feel bad. You can shut it off temporarily with that kind of stuff, but it always comes back. And before long, that process of numbing it becomes one of the biggest things that you end up numbing because it's a vicious cycle. But I like the idea that you guys are talking about this at this point in your lives because it's just a game you don't want to play. You know what I mean? And I think there's tons of people out there that can casually drink some alcohol and have no issues with it. But then there's a lot of people that can't. And, there's a lot of circumstances that lead into what could cause problems. And, boy, it's just a lot easier if you don't even go out there and tease that lion. There's no reason to even go down that road. What else?
And, something I always think about is, if your brain is obviously more mature when you're 21, you have a higher chance of, number one, stopping your brain development, by drinking sooner, like you said. And, where was I going with this? Why, if you have the chance of drinking after 21 and being able to, drink responsibly, actually, or drink 3 years sooner, and, it, just introduces your brain to something that it shouldn't. So maybe, let's say you drink quite a bit when you're, 16 to 18, and then you your brain almost recognizes that feeling of oh, whenever I drank that, it made me feel better. Let's say you're further down the line, 22, 23, going through something feeling anxious, and your brain kind of remembers that, and it's oh, maybe I should go back to that. It's just
you can use it as a tool, right? Yeah. And when we said your brain's not fully developed and we're not responsible and we don't make good choices when we're young. If you're sitting there if you're at your parents' house or you're going to a neighbor's parents' house and they are allowing you to do something illegal and to do it at their house, well, if you're a young person, what is that telling you? That's telling you that it's okay to not follow laws and to not use common sense, right?
Yes.
So you're just going to go, well, if these older people are saying it's okay, this must be fine.
And something I've noticed is I probably talked to 5 or 6 friends about it. They don't even realize what the law actually is. Is they're I think that the general understanding is that it's legal to drink if you have an adult with you. It doesn't have to be your parent. It's just the general understanding of what I feel like most people my age think the law is, whenever it's actually not.
Right.
So
they assume something that is not
and
correct.
Not saying that it's drinking with your parents, depending on what parents you have, it doesn't mean it's going to be done responsibly or not. But I think it still offers protection until your brain is little enough to, or developed enough to handle it.
That's right. And let me tell you the easy way to get rid of all those negative feelings we have is to try to put a Band-Aid on it and numb it. And that's why, and you said it too, with social media and the way our culture is now, a lot of that stuff is really accessible. A lot of drugs and alcohol, you can get it really quickly now, which is a lot different when I was younger. But the easy way is to numb it with that kind of stuff, right? But you got to do it over and over again because those feelings don't go away. The hard way to take care of it, and the best way to take care of it, is to actually get in community with people and talk to someone and get those feelings out of you and be able to talk through it. And if need be, to see a professional that can help you with those things. And if you have enough, if you have, some chemical imbalances, you need to see a professional that can help you with those things. But for the most part, when people start getting those feelings, is to be in a community with people that you trust, that you can go and talk to somebody like your pastor, or have parents that you can talk to, or go see a counselor, or do this, because there's a spiritual aspect of getting it out of you by journaling or praying and writing a prayer request down or talking to a friend and getting it out, because that's the biggest thing is a resentment and anxiety takes root in you by suppressing it, pushing it down, saying I'll deal with it later, or I can handle it. That's the big thing that I would always say is I can handle it. When you can handle a little bit, but once it gets to where your brain's not shutting off, you're going to look for anything to try to stop that, So I would encourage anybody is if they're struggling with a lot of issues is to open up about it, because getting it out of you is the first step in not trying to look for a quick fix, because we're in a quick fix society. Everything is fast food, fast everything, and that's part of it. I think it's part of it too, Well, there's a lot of crazy things that have to do with this, right? Now, let me ask you this question. The third topic you said was suicide. How does that get involved in where that would be even in the same topic of drugs and alcohol? How would that be connected?
I think some people think like they're so far gone that like they don't really have a way that they can fix it.
Yeah.
They don't really see the way out of it.
Yeah, like they feel so addicted, like they've just gone down this slope and they don't think they can come back from it. Mm-hmm. And it leads to just like depression.
Mm-hmm.
I think in a big word, would that be shame?
Yeah.
Right? That is a killer word right there. Because when you start off, nobody ever starts off wanting to be an addict or an alcoholic.
Right.
Nobody does, right? It just, it happens over a course of time. And when you're taking those things to numb those feelings, what ends up happening is the act of your brain's a funny thing. You go, man, at some point when it's controlling your life, when all you think about is that next drink or that next drug. Mm-hmm. So you're not, the biggest thing that you're trying to then numb is the aspect that I am so weak that I've become an addict now. And I can't live with myself for doing that. So now you're doing it you see how it gets to be. I always say, when you're young and you're in your life, you're the engine, and your life is the train you're pulling behind you. But an addict starts working its way back to where you become the caboose, and that drug is the engine, and everything is pulling you down the tracks, and you're making no decisions without that. And I think a lot of people get in despair and shame, and they don't know what to do. And that a lot of times they drink themselves to death, and it takes a long time, or they overdose, and that's so dangerous nowadays with the powerful drugs that you can get a hold of. But I agree with you. I think they get despair and they feel so bad they don't think there's any other way out, right? And is that the most dangerous place to be in, do you think?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hear people talk about, counselors talk about, when the language that they hear people use, the most dangerous language where you really have to be aware is when you hear somebody in a conversation start saying things like, I think my family would be better off without me, or I think I do more harm than I do. It's that kind of language that's really terrifying. Have you ever heard anybody?
I haven't heard that, but I know like some of my friends, like the day before a test and we're like really stressed and we're just like studying, they're like, I'm going to kill myself. And I'm like, don't say that. Because you're just speaking.
Oh yeah, they're real flippant with that kind of language. Yeah, that's kind of weird.
And I'm like, don't say things like that.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to put if those thoughts are in your head, you don't want to speak them, because then that makes it kind of real, I guess.
Well, and there's value in you guys recognizing when somebody's maybe starting to go down that wrong road, to be a good friend to them and to try to help them, right? And to connect them with resources, but you got to do it in a creative way. It doesn't feel like you're coming down on them. That's tough, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, not that you should hold those words in if you're really feeling that way, because you do need to talk to people, but you shouldn't just throw it carelessly around.
But I think there's a responsibility to try to help somebody, right? Mm-hmm. If you see them going down the wrong path, right? So we're good. Well, we just touched the surface of this topic. This topic is you could talk about this all the time, because it affects everybody in every family, especially nowadays. But we hope this helps, and stay tuned for another great A for J podcast by students for students. See you later.